We have another month of reading behind us with the closing of May. And in May, I did end up with a sort of a broken TBR, and I ended up reading some horror novels, but they were still good books overall. And I have quite an exciting month of reading coming up for June, including a buddy read and a month of 2026 science fiction releases. So I forgot to mention this in my last monthly update, but I did go on to Bart's channel, Bart's Bookspace, and he interviewed me for an episode of his Why Sci-Fi series. So if you're interested in what kind of science fiction I like, and a few other surprises in there, Bart does we have kind of an interview, kind of a conversation about science fiction. Had a really great time. So if you haven't seen that yet, go ahead and go over to Bart's channel and check that out. And I will also add a link below in the description. And that was Bart's episode 10 of Why Sci-Fi. So, if you have the extra time, go ahead and watch some of his other videos on there. He has some great content overall, some great book reviews, some great conversations with other sci-fi booktubers. So if you haven't subscribed to Bart, I would definitely recommend his channel. And with that mention of Bart, let me go ahead and get into my first book of this monthly update. And the first book of June, which is going to be Stations of the Tide by Michael Swanwick. And I'm doing this as a buddy read with Bart, Ira from SF Words of Wonder, and also Robin from his channel Bookspin. And this is supposed to be on Ira's channel, so be looking out for this in the next week or two. It should be up on his channel, and I'll of course link that video below in the description when it comes out. But otherwise, you can go ahead and I'll also link below Ira's channel in there, so you can go ahead and check out his channel and subscribe. So we should have a fun time with that. Bart, Robin, and Ira, all three great science fiction booktube channels. But we'll be getting into this Stations of the Tide. It's a 90s science fiction book, but I think it's kind of about an area that gets submerged under this cataclysmic tide that only happens every 100 or 200 years. So I haven't got into it yet, but by the time this video comes out, this will be my current read, and then we'll have that in-depth discussion over on Ira's channel. As for what I ended up reading in May, I ended up stepping away, kind of taking a break from science fiction and reading some horror, some speculative fiction thrillers. And I started out with Joe Hill's Strange Weather. So this is a collection of 4 novellas by Joe Hill, and they all have this theme of weather, of course, hence the name. But this is a really great collection of stories. I wasn't sure what to expect. Of course, Joe is a good author, but there's some 5 out of 5 stories in here. A fantastic collection. It isn't, there's some horror elements, but I wouldn't say this is straight up horror. There's kind of a lot of weird stuff going on here. We have the first story called Snapshot, this is kind of more routine horror, Joe Hill, kind of Stephen King type horror. It's about a boy who comes across this man that has a Polaroid camera, and when he takes pictures of people, it actually steals their memories, and then the photo that comes out will be a stolen memory from that person. And it's kind of a fun, kind of a coming of age story, but it was really enjoyable, and it did have a little bit of some aspects of some strange weather. There are this young boy's having to deal with this downpour of rain in a couple of the scenes. So yeah, I did end up reading that story, and it was a 4 out of 5 for me. And then the second story was a 5 out of 5 story for me. It was called Loaded. And it was kind of Joe Hill's take on gun culture and racism in America. Didn't quite so much deal with the weather as the other 3 stories, although it did have some storms going on. But the main focus of this was about guns and their effect on society, and and the kind of damage a single person can do with a gun if used irresponsibly. So it was a fantastic story. I'd definitely recommend reading that one, and it ended up being my favorite story of this collection. And then the third story is called Aloft, and this was one I gave 4 out of 5 stars. And it's about this really strange story about a man who parachutes from an airplane, and he's actually terrified of heights. There's a reason why he ends up in this parachuting situation, mostly just from bad choices from that character. But he ends up landing on a cloud, and it's not quite a normal type of cloud. It was a very strange story, but really compelling, really engaging. What he finds on this cloud and the things that can happen on this cloud. But I've never read anything quite like it, and I really enjoyed that story as well. And of course, it has this strange weather theme, is because this cloud up in the sky, which ended up being not quite a cloud at all. But it was another recommended story, and it's just a really a very unique and creative ideas here from Joe. And then the fourth story was called Rain, probably my least favorite of the collection, but I still enjoyed it. Gave it a 3 out of 5. And it's about this situation where it starts raining these crystal needles, and this downpour goes through this town, and it rains these needles, and if you're out stuck in it, if you're outside, not underneath a roof or anything, these crystals kill people. So they go through this town and kill thousands of people from this downpour of crystal needles. So it was also a really interesting idea. Just wasn't quite as compelling as the other stories as far as the plot, as far as the engagement of the plot. But overall, Strange Weather, definitely a recommended read. I think, even if you're a science fiction fan, you'd probably enjoy this. It isn't straight up horror. It's more kind of speculative stories. So definitely a recommended read. And then after reading Strange Weather, I kind of was in a horror mood. So I went ahead and read Nestlings by Nat Cassidy. And I also was able to meet this guy in person. He had an event near me. And so I got this book signed. So I read Nestlings and Small Town Horror by Ronald Malfi. Both of these were good horror books, so I won't talk too much about them. Nestlings was kind of a Rosemary's Baby inspired story, and Small Town Horror was kind of it was a horror story where these 5 adults, when they were kids, they bullied another kid and ended up having this terrible event that happened. And then 20 years later, as they're adults, what they did is kind of coming back to haunt them. So this is a very common story as well, common horror trope. So both of these books were actually kind of derivative of earlier horror stories. Very common tropes. Nothing really too original here in either of these. Although this did have an interesting, I don't call it a monster, I guess, near the end. Nestlings did. But even though they're kind of derivative, they're both very well written, very engaging, very quickly paced. The characters are great. So I did enjoy both of these stories. Probably Nestlings was the better one. 4 out of 5 stars for me for Nestlings, and then 3 out of 5 for Small Town Horror. And these are both fairly recent releases, so this is definitely modern horror. But I liked them both enough that I will probably read some more from both of these authors in the future. And then once I got back into science fiction, I read Andre Norton's The Stars Are Ours. This is a vintage sci-fi novel, came out in 1950s, 1954. And this was a really fun sci-fi adventure novel. It kind of takes us on a fun sci-fi adventure reminiscent of early science fiction films and television shows from that time period. The 50s and 60s type of science fiction that you'd see on TV. And the first half of the story in particular feels like it could be adapted straight onto the silver screen. It takes us from this isolated cabin in the woods to a kind of escape chase sequence that leads to a cave with an AI supercomputer in it. And then the second half of the story is when the characters actually go into space, where they're launched into this escaping kind of a escape situation. They're launched, onto this rocket into space. And the two halves of this book really are quite different from one another. I mean, they can almost be separate novels, but you of course you need the context from the first half for the second half of the story. But they're both very different halves in not really in structure, but the function and the plot ideas are very different. But I had enjoyed both halves of the story. They're both fun and engaging. And what happens here is Andre Norton sets us in the year 2500, where humanity on Earth has kind of devolved into these two major factions. We have the company of Pax, the Pax Empire, that has this authoritarian leader. And then we have the second group called the Free Scientists. And we're in this situation where the Pax Empire rose to power by blaming kind of the poor state of Earth on these hideous weapons that destroyed much of civilization. But they kind of blame this whole situation on the Free Scientists that and the science that created these terrible weapons that destroyed most of the Earth. And so the Pax Empire kind of spends its time on this kind of crackdown, this authoritarian crackdown, and on the Free Scientists. So they've hunted down most of the Free Scientists, and there are a few left remaining in hiding, which brings us to our protagonist of the story. His name is Dard Norris. He's living in his cabin with his brother and his niece, and they're in hiding from the Pax. But his brother is working on this formula that the Free Scientists need. The rest of the Free Scientists are also in hiding. He's working on this bit of information that they need, and then they're found out by the Pax and have to go on the run from them. So that first half is Dard and his niece Desi, kind of on they're on the run from the Pax. And so they have to run through a forest. They go through a cave. They kind of have to hide out in this barn for a while. But it's a very much a fun science fiction adventure. And then the second half of the story is when Dard does meet up with the rest of the Free Scientists, and they escape into space on this rocket. And then this rocket goes to a completely new planet that's it's habitable by humans. It's kind of Earth-like. They can breathe the air. It has its own native animals and things on it. So the second half of the book becomes kind of this sci-fi adventure story on an alien planet, where they land the rocket, and this planet's going to become a colony for the Free Scientists. And the second half kind of becomes an exploration of the planet, where they encounter all sorts of different creatures and plant life. And they're out kind of searching. There's some evidence maybe that there's some intelligent life on the planet. Some interesting things going on with that. But overall, it's a quickly paced book. It actually packs in quite a lot of ideas for such a short novel. It's under 200 pages, and it does feel a little juvenile at times. I believe Andre Norton wrote this for kind of a younger audience, and most of her work, I believe, is written for kind of a young adult audience. But I do think she does manage to insert some meaningful themes throughout this story. She kind of addresses the tyranny of mankind, human conflict and racism. And then, of course, the theme of humanity's need to expand and explore. So while it is juvenile, it's still still covers some interesting and more meaningful and important themes. And yeah, I enjoyed this novel overall. I would recommend it as a fun sci-fi adventure story. Has that great feel of a classic pulp sci-fi with spaceships and ray guns and aliens and action and all that kind of thing. So if you manage to find this one in a used bookstore, I think it'd be worth picking up and spending your time to read it. So won't take long to read through this. It's a very short read, but it is recommended, and I'm going to give this one a 3.5 out of 5 stars. And this was my first Andre Norton novel, so I think I'll do plan on continuing reading more from her in the future. I also read the Asimov's May-June issue and had some really good stories in it. This is a fantastic issue. I really enjoyed it. I don't think there was a single bad story in this issue, and a couple that are close to 5 stars. I won't say too much about it here. I'd like to plan kind of a half-year roundup of Asimov science fiction in a separate video where I'll kind of talk about my favorite stories from the 3 issues that I read. The 3 issues that have come out. They release 6 issues per year. But I'd like to do a video talking a little more about that just by itself and going over some of my favorite stories. I probably won't talk about every single story just because there's so many, but kind of highlight my favorites. But I'd like to have that video out June, July, sometime in the next couple of months. But in the meantime, if you do find this issue in stores, I would recommend it. I really enjoyed it and had some fantastic stories in it. So that's everything that I read during the month of May. And let's go ahead and get into my TBR for the month of June. So I do plan to spend much of the month reading new release science fiction. So science fiction from this year, 2026. Of course, I'll start out with Stations of the Tide. That'll take up my first few days of June. And then I'm going to go into Martha Wells' new Murderbot book, Platform Decay. If you're familiar with Murderbot by now, this is the 7th or 8th book story into it. So I think if you're a fan of this, you probably know what it's all about. But I will be reading this one, and I might do a review on it later. I might not. I don't know. I don't know how useful a review for a book is when it's this far into the series. If I do a review of this one, it'll be a short one. I won't do like a full in-depth review, just kind of a brief overview and my thoughts and, whether you should continue reading or not. But I think if you've made it to Platform Decay, you probably are a Murderbot fan, so you're probably going to read it no matter what other people's reviews say. And you're probably going to like it too. So, but I will be reading that one. And then after Platform Decay, or sometime during the month, I don't know what order specifically I'm going to read these in, but I'm also going to be reading Palaces of the Crow by Ray Nayler. And this is his new book. And I did manage to get this book signed by Ray Nayler. He pre-ordered this one from a bookstore in Washington, D.C., and he went and signed all those in person before they shipped him out. So that was really cool to get. But of course, he wrote. I think this is his 3rd full-length novel. He's got The Mountain and the Sea, Where the Axe is Buried, and now Palaces of the Crow. And then he also has a novella, Tusks of Extinction. I really, really enjoyed Tusks of Extinction. One of my favorite novellas I've ever read, probably. And I've enjoyed his 2 full-length novels as well. This one is set during World War II, where this girl meets up with some intelligent crows. So I'll be interesting to get into this one. Not your kind of typical science fiction concepts in this one, seeing as how it's kind of a historical fiction almost, I think. But with that intelligent crows in there, it's got some elements of sci-fi. But hopefully I'll get this one read and then be able to talk about this more on the channel in the future. And then after that one, I'm going to be reading another new release. This one is called The Republic of Memory by Mahumud El Said. Yeah, I might be wrong with the pronunciation there. But this one is about a generation ship, and it's got an Arabic-centered science fiction, so Arab futurism, I think is what they call it. So I don't know if I've ever read any Arabic science fiction before, so that'll be interesting to read. And I'll always like a story set on a generation ship. So hopefully I can get this one read and then talk about that on the channel as well. And then I do have one more I was going to read. I forgot to grab it. And this one is a Korean science fiction collection of short stories. Also came out this year in 2026. If We Cannot Go at the Speed of Light by Kim Cho-yeop. Translated by Anton Her. So yeah, this is a Korean science fiction, which I don't think I've read any Korean science fiction. I've read plenty of Chinese sci-fi. Well, maybe I've read a couple short stories Korean, but I haven't read much of it. So this will be interesting to get into. It is a collection of these short stories, so it's got could have some interesting stuff in it. It's not a very long one, so hopefully that'll be a quick read. It's got some nice cover art on here. But yeah, that'll be a packed month of new release science fiction for June. So could be some exciting reads, but with it being new releases, you never really know how they're going to go. Sometimes they're great, sometimes they're not. But we'll see how this goes, and I'll talk more about these in my next monthly update, and maybe some reviews of these novels in between here and there as well. Be looking for that out on the channel, and let me know if you plan on reading any of these new releases in the comments. Are there any Murderbot fans out there that plan on reading Platform Decay, or maybe you've already read Platform Decay because it did come out last month, I believe. So I'm a little bit behind in my new release reading, but I'll be getting caught up this month in June. So let me know in the comments, what have you been reading for the month of May? What are you going to read for the month of June? Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. See you next time.